You're curious about the secret language of money, right? All those
Oh,
colorful terms we hear floating around. You
yeah,
want to understand them, but maybe without, spending hours digging through dictionaries.
right.
Well, you're definitely in the right place. Welcome to the deep dive.
We've gathered a really fascinating set of sources for you today, looking at how slang works, specific examples people use, both here in the U.S. and over in the U.K.
It's amazing, isn't it, how pretty much everyone everywhere finds these informal ways to talk about something as basic as money.
It really is universal.
Mhm.
It tells you something about, well, human creativity, I suppose.
Exactly. So, our mission today really is to unpack some of the most interesting, maybe the most common slang terms for money.
Yeah, dig into where they came from, what they actually mean.
We're aiming for those kind of aha moments, the ones that make things click, but without just throwing a massive list of words at you.
Keeping it focused.
Ready to jump in?
Absolutely. So maybe we should start with the big question. Why? Why do we even have slang for money? What's the point?
Okay, yeah, good question. Why all these funny nicknames for cash?
Well, I think part of it is just playfulness.
Right.
Calling money dough or
Yeah.
cheese.
Yeah.
It adds a bit of lightness, maybe humor, to something that can be pretty serious.
That makes sense. Like a little inside joke sometimes.
Kind of, yeah. And also, historically, and even today, it can be about discretion.
Ah, like a code.
Exactly. Sometimes you want to talk about money without shouting it from the rooftops. Slang gives you a way to do that. And beyond that, these terms often, they reflect how a culture sees money.
How so?
Well, is it seen as a basic need like bread? Or is it connected to how it looks, like green?
So they're not just random words thrown out there. There's usually some logic, some connection underneath.
Often, yeah. And you see patterns.
Yeah.
Lots of terms refer to the physical stuff, the bills, the coins.
Right, the actual
And then
cats.
you have words for just wealth in general,
Yeah.
or terms for earning it or spending it.
And it changes over time, too.
Right,
So,
definitely. Slang is alive.
yeah.
Some terms fade out. You don't hear bean for a dollar much anymore, but new ones pop up all the time, especially like in music or online.
Okay, so let's dive into some specifics. Let's start with the US. What are some really common ones we hear all the time?
Probably the king of them all is bucks.
Right. Bucks. Everyone says bucks. Where's that from?
Well, the most common story traces it back to early American colonists trading deer skins, bulk skins.
Ah, so one buckskin was worth a certain amount.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
It became a unit of value, and it just stuck. Still super common, very casual way to say dollars.
Totally. Okay, what about the actual, paper money? The color?
Well, that brings us straight to green, obviously, and greenbacks.
Greenback sounds a bit more old-timey.
It is, yeah. There's a specific history from the Civil War.
Yeah.
The government issued currency then that had green ink on the back. It was partly an anti-counterfeiting thing.
Huh. Interesting. Building trust in the money.
Exactly. Then you get into the food terms, which are also often about the color green.
Like.
Lettuce, cabbage, celery.
All right, you hear those in rap songs sometimes. Ludicrous and cabbage, Jeezy with celery.
Yeah, those food metaphors, they really seem to connect with people. They're memorable.
They really are. And that food theme, it doesn't stop there, does it? We've got bread and dough.
Exactly. Those link money to, like, basic survival, sustenance, what you need to live.
Money as a necessity.
Right. And interestingly, historical records suggest dough was used for money even earlier than bread.
No kidding. Okay, what about cheese or cheddar?
Yeah, cheese, cheddar. The thinking there, possibly, is a link to government cheese,
Yeah.
from welfare programs back in the
Ah,
time.
okay. I hadn't heard that theory.
It's one possibility. But whatever the origin, it's definitely common now. You even hear rappers getting playful, like E40 supposedly coining Gouda.
Huh. Gouda. I like that. It does seem like food terms really emphasize money as fuel for life.
It seems that way, yeah. A very fundamental connection.
Okay, all this food talk is making me hungry. Let's shift to bigger bills. What about the $100?
Ah, the big one. That's where you get Benjamins, or Benji, or Franklin's.
Because of Benjamin Franklin on the bill.
Precisely. And that connects to a broader term, too. Dead presidents.
Right, for paper money in general, though not all of them were presidents.
True, Hamilton, Franklin. But the name stuck. You hear it in music, too. Eminem used it.
Dead presidents to represent me, yeah. Okay, what if we're talking thousands? Like $1,000?
But you've got grand, often just shortened to G,
Geez.
or large, or K,
Yeah.
from Kilo 4000. Also rack, stacks, maybe yard.
Where did grand come from? Sounds kind of, well, grand.
Yeah. The story goes it might have started with the mob, early 20th century, a discreet way to say $1,000, which
Mm,
was a lot back then.
makes sense. Keep it low-key. What about rack? That feels newer.
It does, yeah. Seems to have gained traction more recently, maybe popularized through hip-hop. Artists like Young Chris.
Okay. And millions.
You might hear M or sometimes M or MN. You see those more in like financial reports sometime.
Right. M for million.
And then there's big ones. That one's a bit tricky.
How so?
It could mean $1,000 or it could mean 1,000,000. Depends entirely on the context.
Ah, okay. So you need to pay attention. This is like a whole layered language.
It really is. And it goes down to smaller bills, too. You mentioned the 100.
The C note.
Exactly. C for the Roman numeral 100. Then for tens, you've got sawbucks.
Sawbucks, why?
The theory is the Roman numeral X for 10 looks a bit like a sawhorse or a sawbuck.
Ah, never knew that. Okay, what else?
Well, tenor is pretty straightforward for a 10. Fin, or 5 spot, for a $5 bill. And a dub for a 20.
Dub for 20.
Probably from the double aspect or just the 2 in 20.
Got it. Okay, so we've got names for specific bills. What about just paper money or money generally?
You'll hear paper, obviously.
Yeah.
Or folding stuff. Pretty literal.
Makes sense.
Coin can sometimes just mean money in general, not specifically metal coins. And, of course, good old cash. Sometimes people even say cash money.
Right, cash money, can't go wrong there. What about some of the more modern or maybe hip-hop related terms?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch there. Things like scratch, skrilla, fetty, guap, guala, guap, lucci.
Wow, okay. Any interesting origins there?
Guap is supposedly an acronym.
Yeah.
George Washington on paper.
Ah, that's clever.
And fetty might come from the Spanish word feria, which means money or fair. Shows how language borrows.
It really does travel. It's amazing how these catch on. What about some others? The sources listed quite a few. Some sounded pretty old.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole grab bag. Moolah, simoleon, clams, bones, smackers or smackaroos.
Jackers.
Yeah, maybe like, slapping down a wad of cash.
Yeah.
Just a guess. Then there's spondylix.
Spondylix, seriously.
Seriously. Origin's pretty much unknown for a lot of these.
Yeah.
Also, wad, nuggets, even tamales.
Tamales, like the food.
Apparently. Seems like a really old one, though. You probably wouldn't hear that much now.
Probably not. Okay. And then for really small amounts.
That's where you get chump change. Or monopoly money, like it's almost worthless.
Right. And even a word like capital.
Yeah, usually a business term, but sometimes people use it informally just to mean money or resources. And speaking of resources, you also hear more figurative stuff like, well, resources or treasure or riches.
Wow. That is a huge list just for the U.S. It really shows the creativity involved.
It really does.
Okay, let's hop across the Atlantic. What about the U.K.? What kind of slang do they have for their pounds?
Well, British slang definitely has its own unique flavor. Probably the most common general term for pound sterling is quid.
Quid. You hear that all the time. Do we know where it comes from?
Honestly, its origin is still debated. Bit of a mystery, that one, but it's everywhere.
Okay. What about specific notes?
Similar to the U.S., they use fiver for a 5-pound note and tenner for a 10-pound note. Very straightforward.
Makes sense. Any other general terms like quid?
There's dosh, another one where the origin is, well, murky. Just a general slang term for money.
Dosh, okay.
And up in the north of England, you might hear brass.
Brass, like the metal.
Exactly. The idea is it might come from scrap metal dealers who valued brass. There's that old saying, where there's muck, there's brass.
Linking money to like hard, dirty work and getting something valuable out of it.
Precisely.
No.
A real connection to industry and tangible value there.
That's fascinating. It tells you something about the local culture. What else is specific to the UK?
Well, you have some older terms that linger, like bob.
Gob. What was that?
It used to be a shilling, which was worth 12 old pence, later 5 new pence after decimalization. The specific value is gone, but people might still say something costs a few bob, meaning a small amount of money.
So the term outlasted the coin's value in a general sense.
Sort of, yeah. Then there are terms for bigger specific amounts. A monkey is slang for 500 pounds.
A monkey. What?
The story connects it to an image, supposedly of a monkey, on an old 500 rupee note from British India.
Wow. Okay. That's quite a journey for a slang term.
Isn't it?
Mm.
And a pony is 25 pounds. A ton usually means 100 pounds in the UK.
Pony, monkey, ton. Got it. So they have their own distinct set, just like the U.S. What about just having money? Being rich or poor?
Well, like in the US, being loaded means you've got plenty of cash.
Okay, that one's shared.
Yeah. But they also have some great idioms. If you're really rich and splashing out, you might be having money to burn.
Right, and the opposite.
You might be as poor as church mice.
Yeah.
A very visual idiom for having absolutely nothing.
Definitely paints a picture. What about saving?
If you're being careful, you might scrimp and save.
Okay, and if someone's too careful, stingy.
Then they might get called a Scrooge, obviously from
Yeah.
Dickens, or a skinflint, or just tight-fisted.
Scrooge, skinflint, tight-fisted. Very descriptive.
They are. And one of our sources, a Reddit thread, reminded us about even older terms like farthing, a quarter of an old penny, and guinea.
Guinea, isn't that still used sometimes?
It is, yeah. Mostly in very specific contexts, like horse racing or auctions for art or property.
Yeah.
It was worth £1 and 1 shilling, so 21 shillings total. Even though the coin is long gone, the term persists in those niches. Shows how language hold on to history.
That's really cool. So both the US and UK have these incredibly rich, varied vocabularies for money. Fascinating. Let's switch gears slightly. What about slang that describes like our financial state or actions we take with money? We mentioned broke.
Right, broke.
Mhm.
Super common on both sides of the pond for having absolutely no money. And just to be clear for everyone listening, it's BROKE, not broken like a shattered plate.
Good clarification. And the opposite end,
Loaded, as we said, common in both places. And then there's ballin'.
ballin'. That sounds very aspirational.
It definitely is. It comes out of hip-hop culture and sports culture. It means living large, spending lavishly, maybe showing off your wealth a bit.
So it's about success, but also maybe the performance of success?
Yeah, I think so. And it has that interesting double link, succeeding financially, but also the original connection to, like, playing basketball well, being good at the game.
Oh, okay. So if someone's ballin', things are probably going well for them.
Generally, yes.
What about terms for actually earning a lot?
Oh, we have some good ones there. You can be making bank.
Making bank, like the bank is yours.
Yeah. Or making a killing, making a mint, making jack, and the classic, bringing home the bacon.
Bringing home the bacon, still used all the time. These all sound pretty positive, like you're really succeeding.
They do. They imply earning a really good amount of money.
Okay. And then on the flip side, saving money, being careful.
That's where you get things like penny pinching.
Sounds a bit negative, maybe.
Can be, yeah. Or cutting corners. Also sometimes implies maybe sacrificing quality.
Right.
But then you have more neutral or positive ones like squirrel away, like storing nuts for winter.
That's a nice image.
Or saving for a rainy day, meaning for emergencies or unexpected hard times. Or just having a stash of cash hidden away.
Right. And if you decide not to save and treat yourself.
Then you might splurge. Go out and spend a bit more than usual on something nice.
Okay. And the word cheap?
Well, it can mean something doesn't cost much, which is often good. These shoes were really cheap. But if you call a person cheap...
Yeah, that's usually an insult. It means they're stingy, unwilling to spend.
Exactly. Context is everything with slang. Tone, who you're talking to.
Definitely. Now, unfortunately, money isn't always earned, honestly. Did the sources touch on slang for, like, illegal or unethical money?
Sadly, yes. The language reflects that too. You have terms like payola, specifically for bribes in the music industry originally. Boodle is an older term for bribe money or illicit gains.
A boodle. Okay.
Then there's lucre, or more pointedly, filthy lucre.
Filthy lucre. That sounds almost biblical.
It actually is. It comes from the New Testament, referring to dishonest gain. Then you have more straightforward terms like dirty money, bribe money, ransom money, or plunder for stolen goods or money. And even terms like yupper, which sometimes gets associated with drug money.
Wow. It's quite a dark side to the language, reflecting the darker side of finance, I guess.
It really is. Slang captures the whole spectrum.
Before we wrap up the main body, our sources mentioned some international words creeping into English money slang.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. Language borrowing happens all the time. We have dinero, which is just Spanish for money.
Right. You hear that a lot. From Old West movies, maybe?
Probably helped popularize it, yeah.
Yeah.
Similarly, pesos, the Mexican currency, sometimes gets used informally in the U.S. just to mean dollars or money.
Okay. Any others?
There's geld, which is Yiddish, original meaning gold, but now commonly used for the money, often chocolate coins, given during Hanukkah.
Ah, Hanukkah geld. Right.
And shekels. That's both an ancient biblical currency and the modern currency of Israel. People use it sometimes as slang for money in general.
Shekels. Got it.
And over in the UK, you might hear wonga. That apparently comes from the Romani word for coal, wonga, which somehow morphed into slang for money.
Coal to money. Huh.
Yeah, the connections can be surprising,
Yeah.
but it shows how interconnected everything is. Trade, history, culture, language.
It really does. So
Mhm.
looking back at all these examples, US, UK, international, are there any big patterns in how these slang terms get created?
Definitely. We've seen a lot of food analogies, right?
Yeah.
Dough, bread, cheese, cabbage, lettuce.
Yeah, tons of them.
We saw terms based on color green,
Yeah.
terms referencing historical figures or money Benjamins, dead presidents, bucks, maybe even hints of old coins like ducats, somewhere in the ancestry of these words.
Right. History plays a big part.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just the sound, like cha-ching,
Yeah.
that cash register sound becoming a word for money or getting money.
Cha-ching, yeah.
Yeah.
It really highlights how imaginative and sometimes surprisingly logical we are when we make up these informal words.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, this has been genuinely fascinating, a real deep dive into money slang. It's just amazing how much variety and creativity there is.
It really is. And knowing these terms, it really can unlock another layer of understanding, in conversations, watching movies, listening to music, understanding different cultures.
Yeah, it's like getting an inside track. So next time you hear someone talking about reading some cheddar or counting their Benjamins, you'll know exactly what they mean.
Hmm? And maybe you'll even feel comfortable using a few yourself.
Yeah. Though maybe, read the room first. Some are definitely more informal than others.
Definitely good advice.
Uh-huh.
And thinking about all this change and creativity, here's something to maybe mull over. Our sources didn't really get into this, but
Okay, cool.
with technology changing so fast, digital currencies, crypto, everything moving online, how do you think money slang will evolve next?
No, that's a great question.
What new words will pop up when we're dealing less with physical greenbacks or quid and more with, I don't know, pixels on a screen?
Yeah, what's the slang for Bitcoin going to be in 20 years? Or whatever comes next. Definitely something to ponder.
Food for thought.
Indeed. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the surprisingly rich and always changing language of money.
My